A few years ago, for friends, Javier, Lucas, Andres, and Sofia formed an inseparable group since high school. They had grown up together in a small town, surrounded by mountains and lush forests. In their late teenage years, they often explored remote places, frequently challenging each other to enter sites deemed cursed. But there was one place they never dared to explore: the abandoned camp in the middle of the woods, where, according to local legend, several people had disappeared decades ago. It all began when Javier vanished. It was night, an ordinary Friday night, and no one paid much attention at first. Javier was the type to wander off on his own, disconnect his phone, and show up days later, laughing at how everyone worried about him. But this time was different. 3 days passed without a sign of him. On the fourth day, his parents alerted the police. Searches were organized, scouring the town and its surroundings, but nothing was found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Concern turned to fear when they found his car at the entrance of a trail leading to the abandoned camp. The driver's door was ajar, the keys still in the ignition, but there was no trace of Javier. His friends, especially Lucas, who was closest to him, decided not to sit idly by. Weeks passed without any progress in the investigation, and the case went cold. It was then that Lucas received a strange message on his phone. There was no sender, just an audio file. When he played it, what he heard left him frozen. It was Javier's voice, choppy and barely audible, saying, "I'm at the camp, come please." Lucas didn't think twice. He gathered Sofia and Andres and showed them the message. There was no doubt it was their friend's voice. They decided to go to the camp that very night to find him. They told no one, fearing the police or their families wouldn't believe them. The journey to the camp was long, crossing the dense forest where darkness seemed to engulf them completely. They carried only a couple of flashlights and backpacks with basic supplies. For hours, they walked in silence, the only sounds being the crunch of branches underfoot and the noises of the forest accompanying their trek. When they arrived, the camp was just as the legends described, in ruins covered in weeds and fallen trees. The ancient wooden cabins were rotten, some collapsed. A cold, almost unreal air floated in the atmosphere. "This place feels wrong," Sophia said, hugging herself. "I know, but we have to keep going," Lucas replied, not taking his eyes off the path. They moved toward the center of the camp, where there was a large, extinguished bonfire and a small building that seemed to have been the main dining hall. As they inspected the area, they found something that froze their blood: Javier's jacket, hanging from a tree branch. It was torn and dirty, as if it had been there for weeks. "Do you think he's here?" Andres asked, trying not to sound scared, but failing. "He has to be," Lucas answered firmly, though his face was pale. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence of the night. It seemed to come from one of the standing cabins. Something or someone was moving inside. With their flashlights trembling in their hands, they approached slowly. The cabin door was half open. Inside, the darkness was total. "Javier," Lucas whispered, receiving no response. They entered in a line, the flashlights sweeping the room. It was empty, except for some broken furniture and scattered trash. However, the smell was strange, a mix of dampness and something else, something they couldn't identify. It was then that Sofia, who had stepped forward a few paces, screamed. On the floor, beneath a table, something was written in the dust: "Don't follow. You won't get out." "What the hell is this?" Andres asked, looking around in fear. "It's a warning," Sofia said, stepping back, her face pale. "We have to leave now." Lucas hesitated, but even he could feel that something was deeply wrong. They decided to return to the path as quickly as possible. However, just as they exited the cabin, something else stopped them. In the middle of the clearing where the camp was set up, they saw someone standing with their back to them, motionless. It was Javier, or at least it seemed so. He wore the same clothes as the last time they saw him. Lucas shouted his name, but the figure didn't move. Javier, he shouted again, this time running towards him. When he was just a few meters away, the figure slowly turned. It wasn't Javier. What they saw was a face that resembled their friend's, but distorted, as if something had taken his body and molded it incorrectly. The eyes were hollow, his skin grayish, as if he had been underground for a long time. Terror paralyzed them until the figure began to move towards them erratically, almost as if it floated. Lucas stepped back, tripping over a rock and falling to the ground. Sophia screamed, and Andres tried to help Lucas, but both fell. Suddenly, the flashlight beams flickered and went out. The darkness was total, and the sounds of the forest ceased completely, as if the world had stopped existing. No one knows what happened next. The next morning, the parents of Lucas, Andres, and Sophia reported their disappearance. The police searched for weeks, but never found any trace of them or Javier. They only found something unsettling. In the center of the camp, someone had carved the word, "They will return," into the trunk of a tree. But to this day, none have come back.